Hello again and welcome, my dear friends. I'm Ryan Campbell. Thank you for joining me on the conversation. We have a very special guest today. Kathy Strain, you are the forest archaeologist for the Stanislaus National Forest,
Hmm.
but you also have a reputation as being a bit of an expert on Bigfoot.
Hmm.
And you know a lot about some of the cultural resources and the history of Bigfoot in our community specifically. So I'm really eager to ask you about that. So welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm honored.
So let me ask you first of all. So does Bigfoot exist in Tuolumne County and in the Stanislaus National Forest?
Yes, he does. And sometimes when we refer to Bigfoot, we think of one isolated individual,
Yeah.
but it's really a population. It's just like any other species that you'd find in the forest. There's more than one. But Tuolumne County in particular has the second highest sightings in the state of California besides Siskiyou
Mhm.
County. And that's just the reported sightings. That doesn't count the ones that nobody talks about or doesn't report to a website or otherwise try to get attention. So for me, that's really significant. We're a beautiful national forest. There's plenty of places to hide, and so of course, why not?
Yeah, and it is a big forest. It's
Hmm.
funny. I don't think people, if you visit Yosemite Valley or if you visit, Pinecrest Lake, you think of these areas as kind of small and enclosed. If you go walking out into the forest, it goes on for a long ways, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, and that the wilderness is vast, and there's a lot of places people don't actually ever go to. I mean, when you do think about Pinecrest, you're thinking about camping that has bathrooms and all those kinds of things. But there's plenty of places you can go where you can camp where you don't have those amenities, but you have a higher chance of having experiences with bears or seeing deer, but maybe also getting to see a Bigfoot.
Yeah. Well, and what's the proper term? Is it Bigfoot? Is it Sasquatch? Are those the same thing? Are they different things?
They're the same thing.
Okay.
Bigfoot is more of a modern term that came about in the 1950s after Jerry Crew up in Eureka area found some footprints, and so it just became what was in the newspaper. And Sasquatch is kind of a anglicized Native American word that it was, Sasquatchy, but it's just become a term that people use, but they're the same thing.
Uh-huh.
They're completely always the same. And here locally, the Miwok, he's Yayali. That's their name
Yayali.
for Yayali,
Okay.
and it's the same thing. It's the same, you know, roughly 7 foot tall, hair covered animal that walks bipedally, and lives in the forest and doesn't have tools, doesn't use fire, doesn't have anything like that. He just lives off the land.
Okay. And uh, is he she it? I'm not sure.
There's
Is Bigfoot a is it a supernatural being? I know some people view it that way, that it's actually like a supernatural being that lives on a different plane, or is it just an animal? It's like an ape, like a human, or like a chimpanzee.
Yeah, flesh and blood.
Okay.
Flesh and blood. And it depends somewhat on which tribe you're talking to
Yeah.
because, all animals have a spiritual side as well as a physical side. And so it's just what we see when you have a sighting as a flesh and blood animal. It's not something that's teleporting or coming in to our realm and then disappearing. It's a flesh and blood animal that you're physically seeing at that time.
Hmm. Has there ever been like any evidence that like DNA or hair samples that have been taken that can kind of like map the genetics of an animal like that?
There have been hair samples, and unfortunately, because in order to identify an animal through DNA, we need a type species. We need to have already documented their DNA and what that looks like. And because we don't have a body of a Bigfoot, any DNA that we have found so far is so close to being human, they can't rule out human at
Yeah.
this point. And so, that's the unfortunate thing is that we believe so that we have actual Bigfoot hair, but we can't discern it as of yet from human.
Yeah. Is is Bigfoot something that we should be afraid of? Is it an animal that is intelligent, or is it more of a beast? Is if you encounter one in the woods, should you run away? What how dangerous is Bigfoot?
Uh, like any animal in the woods, I wouldn't try to pet it
Hmm.
because, like a bear, you don't know what a wild animal is going to do. You don't know how they're going to react. I believe that they're intelligent because obviously they've lived successfully in the woods for thousands of years, and so they can't, they have to be intelligent enough to know their environment. But are they human intelligent? That's really hard to say. I mean, we have artifacts, we create fire, we can do all kinds of different things, but that's our evolutionary path of how we got where we got. And so we don't see any evidence of that in Bigfoot. I've never found a Bigfoot tool. I've never seen a fire that I can't, say a human didn't do that. And so, but do they need fire? We need fire because we have to cook our food. Do they have to cook their food, or do they even eat meat, or are they just vegetarians? There's a lot of stuff we don't know. And I rely heavily on what Native Americans have told me, what they believe, what's in their traditional stories. And in a lot of ways, that's not going to help with the question, because my book is called Giants, Cannibals, and Monsters. And what that represents is just some tribes, like next door, so we have the Miwok here in Tuolumne County. Next door to the Miwok are the Tule River or the Yokits tribe. And to them, Bigfoot is their creator. We wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for Bigfoot. We certainly wouldn't walk on two legs if it wasn't for Bigfoot, because Coyote wanted us to walk on all fours like him. And this is actually really interesting. I just want to pick this up really quick.
Yeah.
This is the hairy man pictographs. This is actually a Photoshop. There's actual real photos in the book. And what it depicts is, right now, the only known pictograph, and a pictograph is painted versus a petroglyph, which is pecked into the rock. So it's roughly 1,500 years old. And it represents Bigfoot. So this is hairy man. He is literally 8 feet tall. And this width of his hands that he's holding out is 6 feet. So he's life size on a rock. And this is mom, Bigfoot. She's 6 foot tall. And this is baby Bigfoot, and he's 4 foot tall.
And where is this pictogram located?
This is on the Tule River Indian Reservation above Porterville, California.
Okay.
And so I'll just set it right back.
Yeah.
But their story that goes with this is that all the animals met at this location and they created man. And essentially, Coyote everybody gave something to humans. So the eagle gave wisdom, fish gave the ability to swim, and Coyote wanted us to walk on all four like him, because we'd be faster on the land. And hairy man was there, and he hadn't said anything yet, and he said, no, they need to walk on all two, bipedally on 2 feet like I do, because that'll make them, our brother, something better than us. And anyway, it ended up they challenged each other to a race. Coyote cheats, as always. That's his character. And they stayed behind, and they created man in this cave, and then afterwards drew themselves on the rock so that man would remember that they were created that way. Then, so that would lead you to believe that Bigfoot's a fluffy little good guy kind of thing. But then when you come over here to Tuolumne County, he's respected for sure by the Miwok, but you don't necessarily want to have much to do with him, in the sense of you don't look him in the eye. If you run into him, you put your head down so that you don't intimidate him. Because that's in ape culture, of course, chimpanzees, if you stare each other down, that's going to cause a fight. And so that they're very respectful in that way of you looking down. How did the Miwok know that? Well, probably because in the past they stared down one and they had bad consequences, and so they passed this on through their oral history. Don't do that, and they still believe that. I mean, Miwok, I don't know many Miwok that you would meet that don't believe that Bigfoot's still here. And they have,
experience too.
It's culturally really rich in the sense of how many stories they have that actually directly involve this county and some of the things that you can see. So on our national forest, we have Pinnacle Point Cave. And I won't tell you where it is because it's culturally sensitive place, but they have a story that they were, Native Americans were in the cave, and Yayali, who had a basket on his back, was climbing up to get him. And they said, no, we're not going to do that. So they took some pine cones and they lit it on fire, and they threw it into his basket that was on his back, and he starts to burn up. And he says, okay, which way shall I fall so that you know where I'm at? And they go, fall that way. And those bones of his body are still on the landscape. It's
Really?
out by Columbia Airport. If you're driving past, you'll see some white stones that are out there, and that's his bones. Those are
Oh, I
Bigfoot's
see.
bones.
Wow.
And they believe that wholeheartedly. I mean, for years, one of the tribal elders, Sonny Hendricks, asked me to continue to go out there, make sure those bones were still there, because they don't want them to, reform and become the bad Bigfoot again.
I see.
And so that's one of their stories, as well as there's a similar story involving Table Mountain.
Yeah.
They have other stories that involve different places
That
here
low,
in the
huh?
county.
So
Yeah.
he goes pretty low elevation then.
Yes. And actually, there has been a sighting. Probably not going to remember, but Red Hills area, not all that long ago, and so it was like, Red Hills. What are you doing down there?
Yeah. Well, if somebody, so you work for the National Forest, if somebody was interested in going to locations that were publicly accessible to increase their chances of possibly having a Bigfoot sighting or finding some evidence, where would you tell them to go?
I would tell them to go to the Herring Creek area. It's
Really?
very beautiful.
Okay.
It's
I've been there many
remote.
times.
Yes,
Yeah,
Groundhog
I know that
Meadow.
area well. Yeah.
It's one of my favorite places. But
Yeah.
it's relatively quiet
Huh.
considering.
I'll have to keep an eye on next time I go up there.
Yeah, and there's known sightings from that location because you're right on the edge of the wilderness anyway.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go in the wilderness to have experience. I mean, not like I'm going to say 2 years ago, somebody had a sighting just above the Strawberry Store. We had a sighting of a Bigfoot going across the bridge right there in front of Strawberry and on a holiday weekend, if you can believe that. But, you got to cross the road sometimes, I guess, because you got to get to the other side. But, and it's really interesting for me as the tribe, they talk about the differences between Tuolumne County's Bigfoot versus Calaveras' Bigfoot. So essentially they'll tell you the Bigfoot in Calaveras County is a jerk. That he's the bad behaving Bigfoot that looks for trouble and tries to, throws rocks at you and shakes your tent and does those kind of, things that don't make you feel very comfortable. Versus Tuolumne County, you're probably going to see him, but he's probably not going to harass you in the sense of run you out of town or run you out of your campsite.
Yeah. You're going to laugh, but I was watching Harry and the Hendersons with my daughters, and they love that movie, except the ending when John Lithgow has to,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I had forgotten how heartbreaking that scene was. My kids were bawling at that, but they love that movie because it portrays such a gentle image of Bigfoot. But the thing that I was thinking about and what I wanted to ask you about, just thinking about that movie, is that sort of the premise is that this family falls in love with Bigfoot and they realize how gentle he is, and they realize that he needs to live in the forest and that they shouldn't tell scientists and that they shouldn't tell the newspapers about him because they know what's going to happen to Bigfoot if he's discovered. He's going to be studied or put in a zoo, something like that, and they realize this is a intelligent, independent creature and should be free. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, if there ever was a sighting, or if a Bigfoot was captured or something like that, what would happen to that creature? And are you kind of the mind that you almost want it to stay hidden?
Well, one of the reasons I got into studying Bigfoot was because it was still a mystery. It was still one of those great unknowns that we could still have in the United States, considering we've touched pretty much everything. But I'm a scientist, and as a scientist, I have to realize there's more than one, and science needs a body to study because we have to be able to describe it. We have to know, does it talk? Does it have a language? Does it have these skills? Is it closer to humans than even chimpanzees, or is it nothing, not even an ape? We need to know that information. And I am one of those firm believers that we're losing a lot of our forests due to wildfires, due to other, not Stanislaus National Forest, we're brilliant on how we manage things, but not everywhere else is like that. And I know enough that all animals have to have a habitat. You have to have a place to live, water to drink, food to eat, and shelter. And if we don't have that because of wildfires or because of mismanagement, the species is going to go extinct.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm unwilling to let thousands go in order to save one. I want to save the thousands. And so if it takes the one, then I'm okay with it because scientifically that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I probably will still feel bad about it, but I'd rather save the species as a whole.
Yeah, and so you think there are thousands? Do you think it's an endangered species?
I
Because
do.
we really don't.
We don't know,
right?
but I think there's probably not thousands in California for sure. I mean, I've had tribal people tell me what their estimates for Tuolumne County were, and it's 6. Versus
In 6 in the whole county?
in this whole county.
So one family, basically.
Basically.
Wow.
Well, they have territory, they need their space
Oh,
too.
I see.
Yeah, and so that wouldn't count what was in Calaveras or whatever, but not many. And so, even though the forest is vast, that's still, they need the space, they need the food. We don't know what they eat, and so I do think they're an endangered species. I think if anything we can talk about being, pretty down on their numbers, I would say it was Bigfoot. And tribes have always told me, Miwok have always told me that it was very common. It wasn't hard at all to see a Bigfoot, even 100 years ago versus what happens now, that it's very rare because they are spread out. And I think they also have a healthy fear of us at this point because we've got those fast cars, we got these things that they don't understand, motorcycles, all these things. And interestingly enough, that it's just a cool story about a tribal elder. He went up from here, Tuolumne County, up to around Shasta to help them revive their dances because they just hadn't had it in a long time. And so they were drumming and making these sounds. And essentially a Bigfoot came up to the dancing and wanted to stay. And I don't know how they communicated, but basically the Bigfoot said, I haven't heard this in a long, long time, this drumming, this traditional stuff that I associate with tribes. He didn't use, not those words, I'm just paraphrasing. And I just want to stay and listen.
Yeah.
And so, and when you think about how old that individual may have been, say he's, 80, 100 years, and he was used to hearing those sounds before, all these other noise pollutions that we have now, that what a beautiful thing that might sound like to them at this point.
So you do a lot of these kind of discussions, right? Like we just in August we had the Bigfoot Music Festival in Twain Harte. Are there any other kind of Bigfoot type events that you go to? I know that you are also a prominent guest on The Proof Is Out There on the History Channel.
Yes.
What other types of Bigfoot related activities are you involved in?
Well, it just kind of depends on my schedule. So I've given talks throughout the United States, Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, Montana. It just depends on who invites me and if I'm available to go. And I've been on lots of documentaries. I was on the original Monster Quest that was the kind of the catalyst for Bigfoot on TV way before, Finding Bigfoot, and did an all-female Bigfoot expedition, which was really a lot of fun.
That's cool.
Yeah, we had a great time. So it just depends. I don't have anything scheduled right now. I'm concentrating, and it is our 4th season on The Proof Is Out There. We're on every Friday night at 7 o'clock on the History Channel. And I've really enjoyed that because it's, they let me be me. And so I get to debunk stuff left and right. And I enjoy that more than I actually knew that I enjoyed doing that. It's like, that's not a Bigfoot, that's a man in a costume. Come on, yeah.
Well, how much of your time do you spend debunking Bigfoot sightings? What percentage are legitimate versus somebody's just having a little bit of fun?
I would say the majority is somebody having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Because they're just too much sometimes, and it's, I always try to, if I was going to give a hoaxer some advice, an animal in its natural environment moves like an animal. It doesn't move like a clunky human who can't see in their mask and the costume's too big and you're 10 seconds from falling over, but the camera cuts off. Yeah. And so there's, tons of people who find it entertaining to do that because they enjoy people talking about it on the internet and people getting into fights over it, because there's some people that no matter what, anything that looks like a Bigfoot is Bigfoot. And there's other people, even if Bigfoot was sitting right in front of them and you could poke them, there's no way that's a Bigfoot. And so there's that dichotomy that it's a little irritating, because just like, come on, people, we got to be scientific about it. Not everything's a Bigfoot, but nothing is not a Bigfoot either. You have to be scientific about what are the facts behind the video or the photo or the sighting, and take for what it is that you can. But if it's a hoax, call it a hoax. Don't worry about hurting somebody's feelings. But if you don't know, I can't tell, there's not enough here for me to say it's a hoax, but I also can't tell it's real, then that's what I'm going to say. I don't know. But then again, I have another one. The Patterson-Gimlin film is a very famous film that was taken up in the Willow Creek area back in 1967.
Is that the one everybody knows,
yes,
of,
the
where
patty pose?
where he's walking like that, and there's a big log in front of him, and
I that's a real Bigfoot to me. I've looked at that film thousands of different times. Bob Gimlin is still alive, and I've talked to him more times than I can count. And there's no holes in his story. That's an animal we've taken and it apart with modern technology and recreated it, looked at the muscles, done all scientific work we can do on it, and we cannot debunk it. So for me, that's a real Bigfoot on video, or on a film, I guess.
That brings up a good question, though. If you think about the how many more people are in the forest now, hunters, fishermen, people hiking, and then the availability of audio and video recording equipment. There are trail cameras everywhere. Why haven't there been more concrete videos of Bigfoot? And what would you like to see in terms of a coordinated effort to maybe do that? It seems like if you put a trail, you divide the forest up into sectors, put a trail camera in every sector, and check them on a regular basis, eventually it seems like you'd get a pretty good sighting.
And that's, I think, a very valid question. And why haven't we gotten... and others would say we have, but yet science doesn't want to accept it because it's not proof. No matter how good a film is going to be, especially today with AI and all this stuff, it's never going to be proof. And even if we put up the effort to put out game cameras all over the place, I don't know that you would get great photos of that. I mean, almost every photo I've seen, like of a deer, the second the camera goes off, the deer's looking right at it every time. It's pretty rare to get it where the deer's not looking right at it, because they smell funny. They smell like chemicals. You can hear the batteries in them. And an animal that's attuned to their environment, I think, would be pretty easy to pick those things out, and I think they avoid them. We have done long-term studies with my group where we've had I'm with Wood Ape, North American Wood Ape Conservancy, and we do have trail cameras up all the time, and we do catch bear or deer looking right at the camera, but we've never gotten anything remotely that was Bigfoot related. And I think it's because they know when something's different in their environment. I mean, you live in Tuolumne County, you know when something is amiss. Wait a minute, I was here the other day, that tree didn't look like that yesterday. You're aware of it, just like your own property. You know when something's missing or something's changed. And I think they're hyper aware of their environment. And so unless we could literally cover every inch where we'd have absolutely no way to escape or go around it, I don't think that's very viable. But yet we do have sound recordings that we have not been able. Cornell University has a sound library, and I have sent recordings to them in the past where they go, we don't know what this is. It doesn't match anything that's in our library at this time. But again, it's not proof. It's just an interesting recording, and I keep it, but I can't tell you what it is. I can only tell you what it isn't because it doesn't match what they have in their library. But science still says, yeah, Kathy, whatever. That's not proof.
Yeah. How do you reconcile that? Do you feel that and would we call this cryptozoology what we're talking about now? Or
Yeah, I mean, technically.
yeah, how do you feel that it seems like it's not accepted in the broader scientific community? How do you reconcile that?
It's fair. Science is science is science. And so it would be no different than, we have a lot of nice people who think they're doing the right thing and collect an artifact, a projectile pointer or an arrowhead in the forest, and they go, oh, Kathy, look what I found. And they hand it to me, and I go, this is nothing. And I throw it in the trash because you didn't scientifically collect it. You took it out of its environment, and now I can't tell you anything about it because I don't know where it came from. I don't know what context you found it in. All I can do is tell you, yeah, it's an arrowhead. And so those standards shouldn't be any different for Bigfoot. Science is science. And so if I can tell you, hey, I have a master's degree in anthropology. I saw a Bigfoot. So that doesn't prove they're real. What evidence do you have? Do you have any hair? Do you have any blood? Do you have a photograph? Do you have any of those things? And essentially it comes back down to the original question. We need a body in order to prove it. And then we can take some governmental money, because I believe it's an endangered species, and do a Jane Goodall type study where we can observe them in the forest, not bug them, but observe them. What do you do? What are you doing? Do you live in a family group where you have a rogue male that has several females and the offspring, or what is it? There's so much to know, and are they like us? I mean, in the sense of they're just humans, but they don't need all these stupid things like telephones and television shows.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice to know somebody out there still has doesn't need that stuff.
Right. Well, and it sounds like that's your ultimate. It sounds like that's your dream. Is that if there is a discovery of a population, you're going to be the Jane Goodall for our generation.
Dream that because I'm already in the government. You don't have to do anything for me. And so they go, hey, Kathy, since you're already here, can you? And we've had those debates. If Bigfoot is found to be real, is it an anthropology person who's going to be in charge of this for the forest, or would it be our wildlife group that would be in charge of it? And so it's fun to have the debate.
That's a significant question. Yeah.
How are we going to treat it?
Yeah. Well, when you make that discovery, will you please come back here, and I will have a million more questions for you?
Sure.
Okay. Well, Kathy Strain, thank you so much for your time. It's really interesting, and I feel like I learned a lot.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Come back anytime.
Okay.
All right. And thank you very much for joining us. I'm Ryan Campbell. Join us again next week, and we'll have another interesting conversation. Take care. Good job, buddy.